निनाहं न च श्रोत्रजिह्वे न च घ्राणनेत्रे न च व्योमभूमिर्न तेजो न वायु चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं न च प्राणसंज्ञो न वै पञ्चवायु न वा सप्तधातु न वा पञ्चकोश न वाक्पाणिपादं न चोपस्तपायु चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं न मे द्वेषरागो न मे लोभमोहो मदोर्नैव मे नैव मात्सर्यभावः न धर्मो न चार्थो न कामो न मोक्षः चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं न पुण्यं न पापं न सौख्यं न दुःखं न मन्त्रो न तीर्थं न वेदा न यज्ञः अहं भोजनं नैव भोज्यं न भोक्ता चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं न मृत्युर्न शङ्का न मे जातिभेदः पिता नैव मे नैव माता न जन्म न बन्धुर्न मित्रं गुरुर्नैव शिष्यः चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् अहं निर्विकल्पो नि निराकाररूपो विभूत्वाच्च सर्वत्र सर्वेन्द्रियाणां न च सङ्गतं नैव मुक्तिर्न मेया चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं 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 शिवोऽहम्
Good morning. Everyone can hear me clearly in the back. So right now we are at the Lake Nona Performance Center in Lake Nona, Orlando. And at the Lake Nona Performance Center, which is run by our friend, Mr. Groves. We also have the Chopra Mind Body Zone, and this is coming to you, this satsang from the Chopra Mind Body Zone at the Lake Nona Performance Center. And we're live streaming across the world, so a lot of people listening to us across the world. Hello, everyone. Hope you're having a good time wherever you are. And we do these satsangs every Sunday about this time, 11 a.m. Whenever I'm here in Lake Nona at the Chopra Mind Body Zone, and also at the Human Performance Center, and over here also is the headquarters of the Chopra Foundation. So check us out, choprafoundation.org, and also Lake Nona Human Performance Center and the Chopra Mind Body Zone. And today the topic for discussion is about language and the role of language in either revealing what we call reality or concealing what we call reality. Does language reveal, expand our awareness, or does language conceal and contract our awareness? So even before I get into that topic, I'll give you the short answer. Language both conceals and reveals what we call reality. Once again, language both conceals and reveals what we call reality. So language both expands our awareness, but it can also contract our awareness. And so we need to understand what language is. Because I sell words for a living, this is what I do. I have done this for 40 years. I have been very interested in the origin of words, in what is called etymology, the origin of words. Very interested in the cross-cultural understanding of language across the world, and also very interested in what we might call the evolution of and the origins of language. What is the origin of language, and what is the evolution of language? If you go online and you go to Wikipedia or Google, whatever, you start asking, how did language evolve? The short answer is no one knows. Okay, at least an evolutionary understanding of language is not there yet. Even though Darwin wrote The Origin of Species, something we should be very careful when we understand Darwinian evolution. Darwin did not talk about the origin of life. He spoke about the origin of species. And Darwin's theories are based on something called random mutations and natural selection. And that's the prevailing doctrine in evolution. I have a problem with random mutations. I think I would call it unpredictable. There's a difference. Random means inherently random. Unpredictable, I don't know what's going on. Okay, so a more precise definition of traditional Darwinian evolution to make more sense, I wouldn't call it random mutations. And remember that Darwin knew nothing about genes when he wrote his great epic Origin of Species. There was no understanding of genes or epigenetics or how consciousness influences gene activity. So we can say with confidence that we've come a long way since Darwinian understanding of evolution. I know the hardcore evolutionary biologists will be very upset, and they usually are when I say this, but there's a growing awareness that random mutations and natural selection does not explain the evolution of species. Maybe unpredictable is a better word, but even that needs more expansion. That's a digression going back to language. We don't have any idea how language, definitely in evolutionary terms, we don't have any idea how language originated. We have a lot of ideas of how it evolved in the human species, Homo sapiens. So, in fact, I also found out that amongst evolutionary biologists, language was considered a not necessary subject as part of evolution. Certain evolutionary biologists even said, we don't need to study language, and it's not part of what we study as part of our evolution. The current authority on language is Noam Chomsky, and even he has many ideas about how language originated, but none of them actually have found support, if I may say so. So I started going back to Eastern wisdom traditions to see if there's anything we can learn about language. And so here's what we know from deep history, okay? How reliable that is. Deep history means history that is unrecorded. So we have to trust the deep historians. There's no documentation of what I'm going to say to you right now. So according to deep history, about 30, 40,000 years ago, there was something called the cognitive revolution. Cognitive revolution. And we are told by deep historians that there were about 8 types of humans. Homo sapiens is what we call ourselves. So Homo sapiens means the wise ones. We were humble enough to give ourselves that name. We are the wise ones. Then we gave names to other human, what we can call hominids. Hominids are human-like species. Okay? Homo neanderthal, Homo floresiensis, and many other types, Homo erectus. So all these different humans look like us. Some were this big, some were bigger than us, but they look just like you and me. But there were different species. So a species only mates within its own kind. But a species is part of a larger family. So if you look at the feline species, for example, the cat family, your house cat is part of the feline species, so is a lion, so is a panther, so is a tiger, so is a cheetah. They all belong to one family, but they're different species. which means they mate only within their own kind, even though they look like each other, with differences, some this big, some bigger, some slightly different features, but they are called hominids, human like. So, about 30,000, 40,000 years ago, there were 8 different kinds of humans, and they all had a language. And the language was only for 3 things: danger, which means survival; food, which means survival; and sex, which means survival. Okay, so the language of all humans was around survival. Very primitive language: danger calls, mating calls, and food calls. After all, we have to communicate with each other, our experiences. Now, it turns out that's basically the rudimentary language of every species. So, lions communicate with each other, antelopes communicate with each other, elephants communicate with each other, and they have different means of communication. So, honeybees communicate with each other. When a honeybee goes to a flowering grove and comes back with a little bit of nectar, it does something called a waggle dance. It dances for a few seconds, and all the other bees in the hive know exactly where to go to find that particular flavor of honey. So, the waggle dance is a language. Okay, the waggle dance is a language. The sounds that bats produce, which you can't hear because the echo of ultrasound, is language. What, therefore, is language? Language is how we communicate our experiences. We communicate our experiences through language. And experiences include everything: memories, imagination, thoughts, ideas. Ultimately, every form and every phenomenon can be communicated through language. But going back to deep history, 30, 40,000 years ago, we also participated in just three activities: language, survival, mating calls, food calls, danger calls. Then we as humans developed Homo sapiens developed a language for what we call stories or narrative language. And apparently the first stories were all gossip stories, and who's sleeping with whom, who can be trusted, who can't be trusted, on and on. But that created what we call, and we'll see in a moment, that created the human universe, the human experience of what we call reality, our ability to communicate through stories and narrative. Notwithstanding that the first language was gossip, this led to other languages or other human stories. One of the first ones to emerge was money. We came up with the idea of money. There was no such thing. No other animal uses this language of Wall Street. What's the stock market doing today? And money became a language. And we see the impact of that: colonialism, empires, nation states, cultures, history, art. Art is a form of language. Okay, but art can be expressed in music, in narrative, in fiction, in mathematics. These are all forms of language. And even though we communicate linguistically, right now I'm communicating linguistically, which is the dominant form of communication in all species, and we'll go into linguistic communication. We have many types of language. Okay, body language. You can look at somebody's body and you say, This person is relaxed. This person is tense. This person is frustrated. This person is happy. If you look at somebody's face, we have 43 facial muscles, 43 facial muscles, and they express over 100 different emotions. And if you watch somebody's face, you can say, this person is feeling joy, this person is feeling pleasure, this person is feeling pain, this person is feeling humiliation, this person is feeling shame or humiliation or disgust, on and on. Okay, there's an emotional language that our face expresses and our eyes express. When a baby looks at its mother, has no language in the beginning before, doesn't understand language, doesn't even know it has a name, but it looks at its mother's eye movements and can tell mother happy, mother not happy. Looks at her facial expressions. Is she frustrated? Is she happy? Is she paying attention? Is she affectionate? Is she ignoring me? All through facial expression. Also tone of voice. Also gestures. And of course, general body language. Your pet, if you have a cat or a dog, can read your body language. And even though when you call your pet by a name, let's say you say your dog is called Tommy, when you use the word Tommy, you don't know what the dog hears because it has slightly different nervous system. It doesn't hear the exact same word, but it responds to that word because now we have an exchange through sound and meaning of what we wish to convey. So, what does language do? It imparts and exchanges what we call mind. Language is the exchange, transaction of mind within a species and with leaky margins, cross species. People train their elephants to listen to them in certain parts of the world, even though the elephant hears only infrasonic, but the elephant can be trained to communicate with a human being. In India, there are snake charmers who actually play a musical instrument, and you can see the snake dancing to it, but you soon realize the snakes can't hear. They're deaf. So what is the snake charmer, charming the snake with? Not with music, but with movement. So the cobra moves according to how the instrument is being placed. So even though sound is the dominant way to convey language and communicate mind within a species and across species, there are numerous ways of communication: body language, musical language, mathematical language, verbal language, linguistic language, and we'll see a higher form of language where you can commune in silence. You can speak to somebody without saying a thing. That probably is the highest truth, when you can commune with someone without saying a word. That's non-local communication in silence. Yeah, I'll just give you an example. A few years ago, I was at a consciousness conference, and a young woman came up to me and she said, I can speak to birds. And, I tried to kind of move away because I said, with these conferences, you see a lot of quote unquote, it's not a good term, new age, freaky people. I've stopped using that word now because I realized I used it out of ignorance. Okay, so she said I communicate with words. I was trying to get out of her way, move away, when she said, and that's my thesis at the Karolinska Institute in neurolinguistics. I stopped. Show you how conditioned we are. Karolinska Institute is the place where they give Nobel Prizes. So I said, oh, but she's a linguist. I should listen to her. I said, oh, tell me a little bit more about how do you communicate with birds. She said, come and sit with me. And so in Arizona, at a resort, we sat on a bench in this garden, and she looked at a bird. She indicated she was looking at that bird. And in a few moments, the bird landed on her knee. She stroked it, and then she let it go. So I said, "Was that bird language? What language was that?" She said, "No, I communicated with the bird in the language the source of all language." And what is the source of all language? Silence. All language, any language, begins with silence. Silence is the common ground of all language. And when silence vibrates, it produces fluctuations of itself. So think of silence as pure consciousness. And when pure consciousness fluctuates, it creates what are called vrittis, or fluctuations in Sanskrit. And these vrittis are sensations, sense images, feelings, ultimately thoughts. And then we communicate those thoughts. That is called language. And when we communicate that, what are we communicating as humans? We are communicating ideas and human constructs. What's the weather like today? How's the stock market doing? How's your mother? Okay. Where are you going today? We can convey any experience through a word. So what's the origin of these words that only humans use for narrative? Only humans. And it's so remarkable that all language, which is linguistic, not just human, is actually the vibration of your breath. That's all it is. Okay, so right now I'm speaking to you. And hopefully I'm making some sense. I'm speaking sentences. And between each sentences, there's a little space. Between every word that I'm speaking right now, there's a little space between every word. What I'm speaking is hopefully not word salad. It's not a mumbo jumbo, although I've been accused of selling word salad too. But hopefully what I'm speaking right now, there's a sequential unfoldment of ideas. There's grammar, there's syntax, there's a little choreography. Who or what is doing that? So right now what I'm doing is I'm modulating my breath. This is what I'm doing. Strictly speaking, that's all I'm doing. I have ideas, and those ideas cause the vibration of my breath in different frequencies and tones. And somehow that makes sense to you. Why? Because we learned how to share ideas through words. And then we learned how to express them by modulating our breath. Now, if I had to teach someone how to do this, it's impossible. But a little baby, as soon as it's given a name, after 1 year, it starts using words. By 2 years, it's constructing sentences, has grammar, syntax, choreography. How? And if you talk to scientists, say, oh, mirror neurons. Neurons are mirroring the neurons of adults who are speaking language. That's pretty good, but neurons don't think. Neurons are correlations of thought. So right now I'm speaking to you and I'm moving, synaptic networks in my brain. The neurons are connecting each other and they're influencing you, and you in turn are listening and your neurons are connecting with each other. And then you in terms of, you're not saying anything, but I can look at your face and see if you're understanding, not understanding, comprehending, agreeing, disagreeing. We are communicating right now. Our innermost thoughts and feelings, some you reveal to me, some I can guess by looking at your body language, your eye movements, your tone. But right now, what we're doing is we're exchanging ideas. And as a result, my mind and your mind are interacting, but because the mind cannot be separated by the activity of the brain, because this is hopefully an intellectual conversation, my frontal cortex is influencing your frontal cortex. And if people are there on the internet, thousands, all their frontal cortex is being activated, and their responses online in the chat box are influencing everybody else's mind. So, where's the mind? The mind is not in the brain. The mind is an embodied and relational process that regulates the flow of energy and information in an ecosystem of living beings. Now, this is a definition adapted from Dr. Siegel, who's a neuropsychiatrist, who gave the definition of mind being embodied and relational and a process. A mind is only in relationship to other minds. But humans use words to communicate. What is basic experience before we use language? In religious traditions, they say first there was the Word. The Word was made into flesh. So the Word was with God. So whatever that means, the Word did indeed construct the human universe. There would be no Empire State Building, no Wall Street, no New York City, no nation states, no culture, no science, no technology without language, without human language. So human language created what we call the experience of the human universe. Everything that you see, from the Milky Way galaxy to the sun, the moon, the stars, is a human word. You said the Milky Way galaxy is out there, millions of miles away. But how do you experience the Milky Way galaxy? Sensations in your body. That's it. Everything you experience is a sensation in your body. In other words, it's a vibration of consciousness. Everything. I call that the Milky Way galaxy, but what am I experiencing? I'm experiencing shapes, colors, forms, darkness. Where is that experience happening? People will say it in the brain, but there's no experience in the brain. We have a neurosurgeon in the back, and he'll guarantee you that if you put a knife through the brain, you don't feel any pain. The brain has no sound, has no color, has no form, has no shape. I mean, in terms of experience, it doesn't. If I look inside the brain right now as I'm speaking, my brain has no sound. You're hearing sound, your brain has no sound. You're looking at colors, your brain has no colors. You're looking at shapes, nothing. There's no such thing as experience in the brain. What is in the brain is the neural correlates of experience, which are also an experience. How do you know they are neural correlates? You look at them under a PET scan or something like that. How do you know there's a brain? You look at it. So the brain itself is an experience. It's not the source of experience. Okay? It correlates with experience. So what happens when we use a word? Any word. What is basic experience without language? Here's a baby, and the baby has no name yet, just born. It's looking at the world. It has no idea what it's looking at. It has no idea it has a body. It has no idea there's a world. All it's experiencing is what in cognitive science we can call qualia. 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 And qualia means qualities of experience. And in our case, the qualities of experience are sound sensations, color sensations, which give us the experience of form. So sound sensations, color sensations, tactile sensations, olfactory and gustatory sensations. These are sensations. Sound is a sensation. Okay? Color is a sensation. Where? In consciousness. So all experience is in consciousness, but for a baby, all that's happening is consciousness is bubbling with qualities of awareness. Qualities of awareness. Awareness itself is without any qualities. Once again, awareness is the sacred ground of all experience in every species. A plant has awareness, otherwise it wouldn't gravitate toward the sun and avoid darkness. Okay, plant has awareness. It captures photons, creates photosynthesis, which is the basis of all life on our planet. Insects have awareness. Amoeba has awareness. It has no brain. Plants have no brain as we know it, but it has awareness. The fluctuations of awareness are species specific and give rise to experience. So, baby is bubbling with awareness, a gooey mess of sounds, sensations, colors, tastes, smells. Now we give the baby a name. We say, "You are Deepak Chopra. You are Indian. Your parents come from this tribe. This is your ancestral history. This is your economic history. And now, what do you have? Awareness has modified itself into perception. So before you have perception, all you have is qualia. I hope I'm making sense. All you have is sounds, this gooey mess of sensations. But as soon as I give it a name and a meaning, it becomes a perception. So look at this. A baby, without describing it, would see colors, shape and form. See color, shape and form on my knee. The only difference between this and this is the color. Okay. But a baby has no words for this. Now we say this is a bottle. This is pants, jeans, covering my knee. That's a tree. Where is the qualia experience occurring? The qualia experience, the fluctuations of consciousness are in consciousness. But some of those qualia, the vibrations are dense. Dense means low frequency, and we call them perceptions. Some are fine, high frequency, we call them mind, emotions, feelings, thoughts. But it's all consciousness vibrating. Vrittis, you call it Shakti, whatever you want to call it in Sanskrit. But as consciousness vibrates, it knows itself as these sensations, and humans give words to these sensations. And then we say the sensation is occurring in consciousness, not in brain. Even the brain sensation is occurring in consciousness. Now, as humans, we say, that's a tree. That's a hand. That's a piece of furniture. That's a human construct for a sensation. The Milky Way galaxy, the stars, this everything that we can use a word for, is a sensation in consciousness, reified. Reified means made concrete as a perceptual activity out there. There's nothing out there. The whole activity is in consciousness. And consciousness knows itself first as qualia, then human consciousness creates perceptions out of that. The body is a perception and a changing perception. The world is a perception and a changing perception. But a perception is qualia given meaning. And as soon as you give meaning, there's a whole history. Okay, you say that's a rose, but that's a human rose. That's not a caterpillar rose. It's not a rose to an insect with 100 eyes. It's not a rose to a honeybee doing a waggle dance. In other words, language not only describes, it constructs. Language conceives, constructs, governs, and becomes what we call the human universe. We call that mind, body, and the physical world through language. And through language that we agreed on. So you say, okay, if each experience is unique, we say we create our own reality, we have each experience is unique, then why do we see the same things? Why do we all agree this is a bottle? Because we agreed to the word bottle for this experience of qualia. This is actually a quality of sensations. This sensation, this sensation, this sensation, this sensation. The alchemy of qualia, given a name, is a bottle, is a Milky Way galaxy, is a tree. is a building, is the face of my mother. Any thought, any form, any phenomenon that has a word creates perception. Before that, just that gooey mess. I would even go further. If you want to go beyond the gooey mess, it's a radically ambiguous and ceaselessly flowing quantum soup. And language conceives, constructs, governs, and becomes that reality, including the reality of your own body. That's why in the Vedanta, when you use Sanskrit, one of the words, by the way, for the body is deha. And one of the words for doubt is sandeha, which means if you talk to a Sanskrit linguistic, which persons who knows Sanskrit words, as I did last week, he said the human body has 40 names in Sanskrit. One of them is sandeha, doubt. So why? He says because there's no body. The body is a human construct. The body is a human interpretation of a changing perceptual activity in consciousness. That perceptual activity looked like a fertilized egg, then it looked like a zygote, an embryo, a baby, a toddler, a teenager. There's no body. It's a changing perceptual activity. The fact you say, I have a body, is a human construct. So sandeha, doubt the existence of the body. Sanskrit, 40 words just for the body. All vibrations. Each vibration creates a different experience. So the word creates context, it creates meaning, it creates relationship, it creates story. Every word is a story. Every word is a story. As soon as I say a giraffe, there's a story. The giraffe, by the way, doesn't know it's called a giraffe because the giraffe itself is a human construct. It's pretty wild. Okay? But giraffes communicate with each other. We can train giraffes to, do certain things. We can train camels, elephants, talk to birds, as my friend did. People talk to parrots, communicate. So the word is a story, and it's a human story. Okay, and it's a story mostly conveyed through breath. And the little baby picks this up, not mirror neurons is the byproduct of that. What consciousness does, it is so infinitely flexible that it can take any word and understand its meaning if it hears it. So a baby could be born in Bangladesh, adopted by a family in Boston, exposed to 5 languages. The nanny speaks Spanish. Okay. Another caretaker speaks Chinese. The parents speak Bengali. And the school, the kid hears English, it can speak all languages, perfect language, perfect syntax, perfect grammar, perfect choreography. What is doing that? The brain can't do that. It's a mechanical thing. The brain is full of basically the same things: carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, sugar, proteins, other metabolites. How does that think? How does that choreograph? How does that create language? This is what people struggle with, and it's the wrong question. The brain doesn't do it. Even the word brain is in our language. We created that word to describe that experience. That's the brain. And that experience is happening in consciousness, which has no location, just like the mind has no location. Mind is embodied and relational, and it's regulating the flow of energy and information amongst us right now, all those people out there. So, are we doing the world when we use language, or are we constructing the world? And the answer is we're doing both. We first describe, but the description itself is a construction. Why is this important? And why do the spiritual traditions, Buddhism, one of the eightfold path to enlightenment is language, right speech. Okay, look at Vedanta. Saraswati is the goddess of language. Without Saraswati, the goddess of language, or the archetype of language, there would be no music, there would be no mathematics, there would be no science, there would be no technology. There would be nothing that we call experience and perception other than the bubbling of that gooey mess of sensations. So through language, we convert sensations into perceptions. Perception is more than sensation. Perception is that's a tree, that's a microphone, that's a watch. Now, perception, therefore, is a learned phenomenon. Learned phenomenon. Now, I mentioned this before. When I was in medical school, I read this experiment where scientists took a bunch of kittens, brought them up in a horizontal room, took another bunch of kittens, brought them up in a vertical room, and when these kittens grew up to be cats, one group of cats could see only a horizontal world, the other group of cats could see only a vertical world. Is the world vertical, horizontal? No, it's the initial experience of those little kittens and their interpretations. Those kittens saw only horizontal stripes somewhere in their consciousness, not in English, but in some awareness, they've thought, oh, the world looks like this, so it must be like this. And then the neurons adjusted their connections to give them only the experience of a horizontal world or only the experience of a vertical world. Now, we are much more sophisticated than that. We give words to the experience and we actually construct the tree, the Milky Way galaxy, the body, the chair, this. Okay, and once we construct a perception, what do perceptions do? They create more stories, they create more ideas, they create more meaning. As soon as you have a perception, you have a definition for that, a word for that, which is a story, context, meaning, relationship, gives rise to other ideas, other stories. That's a rose. So that's a rose to a human being. Can give it to your girlfriend on her birthday. Somebody else can take that rose and make a garland out of it and worship a deity. Somebody else, an insect, can use it for food. So the rose is a human rose. The Milky Way galaxy is a human Milky Way galaxy. Everything that you have. So what is reality without a word? Nameless and formless. Reality without a word is nameless and formless. And being nameless and formless, it's infinite possibilities. It's radically ambiguous. It's unpredictable. That's why I like the word unpredictable better than random. What is consciousness? It's self-organizing, self-evolving, self-constructing, and it reveals to us a world that we have constructed, not the real world. So these days we are talking about metaverse, right? We are in one particular loca, in one particular frequency domain of a metaverse of species-specific perceptions, species and culture-specific perceptions. And the reason you and I might argue or fight or even go to war is we differ in our definition of reality. You're a communist, I'm a socialist, he's a whatever, on the Wall Street, he's a capitalist. These are words, but the words have stories, and we are attached to the stories, and we will defend our stories even to the point of death. We will we'll become suicide bombers because we believe in the story. Okay. We'll go to war. We'll engage in trade wars. We'll engage in conquest, but we can engage in creativity, inspiration, insight, intuition as well. It's a choice. But what is at the bottom of this? There's a word. And the word is an entire story. And even though we agree on the word bottle of water right now, this could be used as a hammer. It could be used to drink water. It could be used to give hydration to a plant. It could be part of the ocean. It could be a rainbow. It could be a rivulet. It could be a stream. It could be a puddle. But actually, only one word, water. Humans have constructed the physical universe by regulating their breath and their body and by manipulating sensations. So every experience you have, sensory experience is a sensation, and every motor experience is also a sensation. I'm hearing you, you're hearing me, that's a sensation. But if you get up and walk, that's a sensation too. You're just changing sensations, then you're creating the whole theater of space time causality by giving words and meaning and context and story and relationship to noise. Noise. So if somebody only speaks Swahili right now, this is noise, what I'm saying. But there is a word for red in Swahili, and everybody who speaks Swahili will know what that word is. So what do? We point out there or in here or here to an experience occurring, which we call Qualia, Shakti. Now let's go. Why I'm doing this is this has great implications in healing, in constructing a world. And our social interactions, our personal relationships, whether we heal from a disease or we die, a lot of it is based on language. Okay. So, by giving meaning, we have now created the world of what we call the physical universe and the mental universe. But in fact, there's neither. It's qualia, bubbling. The rest is a story. Everything is a story. So given this, what do the Eastern wisdom traditions say? They say, because humans have self-awareness, humans have an awareness that's directly connected to the source of all languages. Humans have an awareness that is directly connected to the source of all experience. And that awareness is called pure consciousness. And when that pure consciousness modulates itself as experience, that modulation, depending on which part of the Vedic literature you read, that modulation is called Shakti. Shakti means it's actually a word for the divine feminine. Purusha is the word for the divine masculine. So the divine masculine is pure consciousness, the bottom of the sea. Imagine the bottom of the sea, infinite awareness. And then the surface of the sea is bubbling as the fluctuations of infinite awareness, the bottom of the sea. So you're seeing waves, you're seeing drops of water, water vapor, clouds, rainbows, puddles, streams, rivulets, waterfalls, plants, everything that has water in it. But those are all constructs. It's water all the way in this example. Before the wave arises, it's water. As it arises, it's water. As it subsides, it's water. Its wateriness can never be taken away. And that's a qualia. That's a qualia. The experience that we call taste. The experience that we say, this is a qualia, this is red wine, this is the smell of garlic. Those are names given to raw experience. So the Vedanta says, humans being self-aware decided that they could construct the universe. And this language, what we call language, it erupts from the unknown, from the unmanifest field of infinite possibilities. It fluctuates. And this fluctuation is called Shakti. And this fluctuation begins with the most primal Shakti vibration, which is called Ananda Shakti, joy. What is the joy from? Creation. You know, when you have a creative idea, do you feel joy? Suddenly you feel like creative ideas. Aha! You feel joyful. So this is called Ananda Shakti, which then translates in something called Ichha Shakti. Ichha Shakti means the desire for manifestation, which then manifests as Kriya Shakti. Kriya Shakti means the activity for manifestation, which in this case, language, is a vibration of breath and using my body to convey sensations that are occurring in my consciousness. And the sensations right now are sense perceptions, sensations, images, feelings, thoughts. Thought is the final product. Final product, it's given the storyline to those sensations. So this thought emerges from Ananda Shakti, Ichha Shakti, Kriya Shakti, and then the manifest world, the physical world. And in Sanskrit, the movement of this into language occurs in 4 stages. The first stage is para. Para means there's intention, but intention exists as a possibility. Like this evening, I might call a friend in Tokyo, but I'm not thinking about it right now. But that idea must be there somewhere in my consciousness. That level is totally unmanifest. It's in the field of possibilities. The origin, the seed of language. It's called sanskara, or memory, or karma. Karma means past experience and how we gave constructs to that past experience. That was a rose. Now I remember that for that qualia experience, the word is a rose. Remember that which was dismembered. And so when we remember, you construct, you reimagine the word, what the rose means, and then you see the rose. Okay? So before you use the word rose, it exists. Where does it exist? Unmanifest, in the field of all possibilities. Then the second unfoldment of that is called para pashyanti, the desire to activate. Let's say there's a seed, the seed of a rose or a rose plant. That's called para. Now activate that, put water, and the seed starts to get activated. That activation is called pashyanti, the beginning of intention. I'm going to call this friend of mine in Tokyo this evening. I'm not thinking about it. At 6 o'clock, I suddenly have the desire. This is called pashyanti, the desire to manifest. Then the third stage is called madhyama. It now is a word. I'm hearing it in my consciousness, madhyama. And that word, rose, has context, meaning, story, romance, Arthurian legends. So much contained in that one word. That might be meaningful to you if you and I have shared the same experiences in the past, which means same karma, same interpretation, same stories. Then you and I may have the similar impulse when we see the rose. Oh, let me get one and offer it to my sweetheart on my wedding anniversary or something like that. But you might get a different idea, okay, with the same thing. Somebody else, because it's filtered through the web of karma and ultimately manifests as our experience of this reality. So that's called Vaikari. Para, unmanifest, which is Ananda Shakti. Pashyanti, the desire for manifestation, Ichha Shakti. Madhyama, context, story, and Vaikari, manifesting the story. Once we know this, then we see that words is how we construct our reality. Everything. In the Vedic tradition, the goddess of language is called Saraswati. So when you look at pictures of Saraswati, she not only has lots of books in her hands, the books are the Vedas, the knowledge of reality, ultimate reality. She also has a musical instrument because she plays music. She also has lotus flowers. She's sitting on a lake, on a lotus, because lotus is the junction point in the lake between the unmanifest depth of the ocean and the manifest world of manifestation. So everything about Saraswati is a symbolic representation of our desire to manifest knowledge, wisdom, culture, art, music, mathematics, and what we call the physical world. So now come back to a little more precision and understanding of this word language. We use words in medical language. If you listen to doctors talking to each other in the doctor's lounge, if you're not trained in medicine, you won't understand what they're saying. Just like if you look at physicists talking to each other in the physics department and they're talking quantum mechanics, unless you've learned how to perceive reality in their language, you won't understand a word they're saying. So if you go to doctor's lounge, you won't understand, they're using words that this person has Guillain-Barré disease, it's inflammatory, cytokines are going up, is it T cells or B cells? And if you don't understand the language they've created, DNA, epigenetics, you have no idea what they're saying. Because they gave meaning to experiences. They looked at something that looked like a double strand, they said, that's DNA. That was a word. Okay? Deoxyribonucleic acid. And they say, oh, it's made of nucleotides. They gave words to those nucleotides: adenine, guanine, cytosine, thymine. And now we don't. This is the alphabet of life. But who created the alphabet of life? Human beings. Do you think a giraffe knows what adenine means or nucleotide means or DNA means? No. We gave meaning to experiences and modes of knowing in consciousness, and we created words. This is the alphabet of life: A, T, C, G, the 4 nucleotides. DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid. We gave it a word. And now we think it's real, when in fact it's the symbolic representation of human experience, knowledge, and human construction. Whatever you can give a word to: genetics, epigenetics, inflammatory products. So now we're in the doctor's lounge and we say, we're discussing a patient with this cancer and we're discussing prognosis. And we say, oh, this person has very aggressive leukemia. The average lifespan of this person could be less than 2 years. Okay, then we go and tell the patient, Mr. Smith, you have very aggressive cancer, average lifespan, prognosis, 2 years. That's a death sentence to that patient. If he believes the doctor and has the authority, believes in authority figures, that's a death sentence. It's like telling somebody, your temperature today. No, let's say if I know you're from New York and I say, the average temperature in New York is 72 degrees. It doesn't tell me what the temperature is right now in New York. Or the average income for somebody in Memphis is $100,000. It doesn't tell me what your income is, even though you live in Memphis. So prognosis, when we define, we're describing a bell-shaped curve. And it doesn't apply to the individual, it applies to the average. But by saying you have 2 years to live, which many times we do, we're introducing what is called a nocebo. Nocebo means the opposite of placebo. Placebo means I shall please. Nocebo means I shall not please. So many years ago, I became aware of the effect of nocebos when I was introduced to some custom that they do in Australia amongst the Aborigines, which is called pointing the bone. So if you have an enemy and you belong to this Aboriginal tribe, you can go to your witch doctor, say, I want this enemy out of my way. The witch doctor will take a kangaroo bone, dance around a fire, chant a few Aborigine mantras, give you the bone, say, point it to your enemy. Within 48 hours, the enemy has nausea and vomiting. In 1 week, is dehydrated. In 2 weeks, dead. And what did you do? You pointed the bone. Because everybody in that culture says pointing the bone after those mantras are chanted kills somebody. And it does. It's like murder with a lethal weapon. So I started to realize, are we as doctors giving placebos and nocebos at the same time? You say, okay, this is good for your headache. Now 30% of people will get cured of the headache even though what you give them has no pharmaceutical efficacy, because you tell them this is going to relieve your pain, their pain will be relieved. Now, here's the interesting thing. If I give you a placebo, I said this is going to relieve your pain, but I give you an injection of Narcan, which is a narcotic antagonist, then the placebo won't work. If I play music to you, which you're enjoying, but I give you Narcan, you won't enjoy the music anymore. Which means the meaning you gave to the story was creating opiates in your body, which you're now blocking with Narcan. This is true of everything. That's why we say belief becomes biology. Okay? Belief, if you hold an idea to be true, and all of us hold it to be true, it becomes true for all of us. What do? We use words. Okay, so I have to be very careful in the choice of words. So coming back to the appropriate use of language, in Buddhism and Vedanta, words can bring you to enlightenment. But before we go there, we started by saying, do words reveal or conceal? So Rumi said, God's language is silence, everything else is poor translation. Silence is the ultimate pure knowing. And the word we give, and the meaning we give, and the story we create, creates our reality of everyday experience. So careful. Before you choose a word, think about it. Before you react, reflect on the word. And you can reflect on any word, and it will reveal its infinite dimensions to you. This is the value of sutras, of mahavakyas, of mantras. We give meaning and embody a vibration to that, associate it with a perception and a story, and because that vibration has been used thousands of times over centuries, it has its own morphogenetic field, which is morphogenesis, means giving rise to form and phenomena. The appropriate use of language, and I'll end with just one statement. Highest use of language is to observe yourself speaking while you're speaking. That's it. If you can watch what you're saying as you're speaking it, that silent witnessing will spontaneously create the choreography, the syntax, the grammar, and only intention you have is healing and wholeness. You'll be a great healer. I'll stop here because there's lots more. Maybe we can continue on the use, how language manifests as sutras, mantras, aphorisms, the whole construction of reality through language. But I think we're running out of time, and that too is a construct. I'll stop here.